Okay, I will bring this October 18th, 2022 Board of Education meeting to order. Roll call.
Kate Thomas,
Here.
Troy Carr,
Here.
Deb Baker,
Here.
Clay Clome is absent with notice. Jamie Clapham is running a bit late. Jim Hansen,
Present.
Michael Berkland.
Here.
Laura Jensen, Kevin Big Crow, and Megan Jew.
All right, we have Pastor James Moore from Journey Church, please, for our invocation.
Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, tonight we ask for your presence more than anything. I pray for your presence to be upon our president, our council, our school board, Lord, our superintendent, these amazing young people here. And Lord, we honor their achievements. Lord, we know it's only because that you have given them the gifts. We just recognize you and we acknowledge you tonight. We pray that, Lord, every person in our city, especially every school-age child or youth would feel the presence of the Lord tonight and would feel your blessing in the decisions that are made. We pray tonight the decisions that we have to deal with are made with conviction, that our decisions would be pleasing to you, O Lord, but we'd also be seasoned with grace in everything that we do. So I ask your blessing, Lord, over this meeting, that it go according to your plan and all would be blessed, especially these amazing young people that are here tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Jim and Deb? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we have first up, sharing the success.
Thank you, President Thomas. I have the honor of introducing our Sharing the Success folks tonight in Mrs. Swigert's absence. So first up, we have Mrs. Lynn Arnold and Mrs. Sarah Graham. They are teachers at Rapid Valley Elementary, and they're here tonight to talk to the board about the recent success that Rapid Valley Elementary had in the Kids Write History contest. So I think they also have some special guests from the school that are here. So go ahead, ladies, please.
Is that on?
That's a trick, Mike. We do that on purpose. So
Surely.
All right. So this year I'm here with my
my colleagues. I teach with the best team in Rapid City. I teach with Sarah Graham and Heather Redderth from Rapid Valley Elementary. And this fall, the West River History Conference celebrated their 30th anniversary by sponsoring a writing contest for fourth grade. And so they encouraged fourth graders to write a one-page family history or about a significant individual in their lives. And we were excited that one student from each class was selected as one of the 3 of the 4 winners were from Rapid Valley Elementary, and they were honored at the West River Writers Conference in Custer State Park. So in addition, the winning papers are also published in the papers along with, these are premier South Dakota authors that have written books. And so this is a big deal. The people who sign their certificates is Paul Higbee has written 6 books and contributes to South Dakota Magazine on a regular basis. So this is quite an accomplishment. So we would like to honor these incredible individuals today who are here in 3 different categories. Our first winner is Paisley Slocum in the category of family legacy. And Paisley, if you would come up when I call your name, she wrote a piece entitled My Grandfather, and she incorporated the history of her family and some funny stories and some history of his parents. And it was a beautiful story. In the next category, we have Miss Billy Bachhaus. And she wrote a piece called Pickle Barrel. This is a fascinating family story from her ancestors who emigrated to the United States in a pickle barrel. And she won the category of historic narrative. And then there is Stacy Mack. And she wrote The Flood of 1972. And this was the story of her grandmother's experience in the flood that was here in Rapid City. So we are very proud of these individuals, and we want to say congratulations. We're so proud of you, and you had a great way of weaving storytelling and history and connecting it to your personal experiences. And we are thrilled to have. We are also really thankful for the board for giving us this opportunity to celebrate these young children for all the work you do, because this is the reason we are here. So thank you, and the district personnel, thank you so much. It's a thankless job and we really appreciate it.
That's amazing. Quite an accomplishment. Congratulations, ladies. Okay, next up, we have Dr. Lisa Hafer, Director of Special Services for the district, and Valerie Seals, Director of TLI. And they're going to talk to the board about celebrating some of the accomplishments of the Dyslexia Work Group for Dyslexia Awareness Month.
I didn't realize that was Lynn's height. I hope that stays. Good evening, President Thomas, members of the board. In honor of Dyslexia Awareness Month, we wanted to take a brief look back at what the committee's done over the years that we've been together. So I'm going to start that off. In 2017, in response to the state's 5-year initiative for dyslexia, we created a 9-member task force for Rapid City area schools, which has met routinely for the past 5 years. Initially, our school psychologists were tasked with researching and implementing, a screener to identify students with the characteristics of dyslexia. They developed and implemented criteria to evaluate and diagnose dyslexia, and identified research-based practices regarding supporting those students that have dyslexia. Our intervention specialists that were represented on the committee had a different task. They were charged with reviewing the Department of Ed's 5-year plan and their recommendations for early intervention. They summarized the state handbook on dyslexia and made it into our own Rapid City area version based on our staffing and how we do things here. And that was critical work for the task force as well. Then the committee at large, all 9 members, created district practices regarding and supporting students with dyslexia, compiled information, resources, tools, and strategies to support students with dyslexia in their classrooms, and created our own version, as I said, of the state handbook. Additional work that's happened over those past 5 years, just a little walk down memory lane. We've had quite a bit happening. We adopted Acadience Reading as our universal screener a number of years ago, and you're familiar with that board because I often bring those Acadience reports to you, and that is our universal screener or our universal identification. We also adopted new core reading materials in that 5-year span. We adopted 95% materials for tier 2 and tier 3 instruction and trained key staff on using those resources. We participated in the MTSS grant, if you remember, and that was a 5-year grant that served 7 of our elementary schools. And as we know, we have 15 elementaries. So part of that work was to assimilate what they were doing and take that core source book training out to the other 8 schools, which was accomplished as well. Created the Dyslexia 101, 201, and 301 courses for existing staff. And now our process is as we onboard new staff, they take 101 and 201 their first year, and then the following year they get assimilated by taking 301. And then finally, there's been great attendance at state, regional, and national training on identifying and supporting the instructional needs of students with dyslexia. So the committee continues to meet monthly. We're now 14 in number. 5 of the members are original, and I'm one of them, as well as Curtis Middleton, our school psychologist, Jody Rouflet, one of our intervention strategists, and Stephanie Hunter, who is now serving as a case manager for Rapid City area schools. So committee's still going strong. We feel like we've made great progress. That list is a lot to take on. Just a reading adoption, in my mind, takes about 3 years. So we're proud of the work, and we're proud to celebrate Dyslexia Awareness Month. And so I'll turn it over to Dr. Hafer.
So I'm very grateful to this group of people that has done an outstanding job over the last 5, going on to our 6th year. And so it's been absolutely incredible. A lot has been learned. So during this last month, we have sent out, and these 3 people have been key to this as well. We've gone out to all 23 schools, introduced information to all of our staff members on dyslexia characteristics, accommodations for the classroom, and what to do moving forward if you see those characteristics and who to reach out to. So we made sure that all of the teachers, paraprofessionals, staff members are more aware so that they can get the help that they need. And also during one of our presentations, we were at Rapid City High School, and Sean Binder, who is a teacher there, shared his thoughts on our information and what he does to support his learners in the classroom. So I invited Sean to come and speak a few words about what the committee has done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And board committee members and staff that are here tonight, I just want to really thank everyone for the awareness. Growing up in public education, I feared that moment that the teacher would pick me to read. I would sink down in my chair as low as I could, and they'd still find me. And I still had to read in front of people. And when I read to people in class, I would get done and my partner to my right would start reading and I'd be like, Cinderella, who? I didn't even know we were reading Cinderella. And I went through life fearing English class. I did a book report on Dr. Seuss. I don't recommend it. Your English teacher doesn't like that. And I finally got to college, and I got off to college, and I shared this with my staff actually a few weeks ago when Dr. Lisa was there sharing with us. And I said, I finally got to college. I finally found out I'm dyslexic. There was a reason behind all that. And just that awareness of just finding out that I was dyslexic, just finding that there was a reason, leaps and bounds just in that first few months, just to find that reason that I don't have to be afraid of English. I don't have to be afraid of reading. I don't have to be afraid of those things was huge. And so just the work that the committee did, I know last year, I won a mug from you. So thank you for that mug. That was very exciting. I entered something, I'm not sure what I did, but there's all these awareness campaigns. And so I proudly sport that mug. So I think one of the biggest things for dyslexia, just knowing that there isn't really, it's not a disease, there isn't a cure for it, is just that awareness, really knowing that that this student is struggling and that we can do something with that. And I think one of the biggest things this year was having the paraprofessionals there, having everyone there to hear from Dr. Lisa and the team, to hear about what we can do in those moments. And even at that high school level, because I teach at Rapid City High School, we still see some of those students coming out with those characteristics and really being able to do that. So on behalf of the community of dyslexia, I would just want to thank the entire team and thank you for everything that you do.
Thanks,
Thank
Joe.
you. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and thanks to your work group for the amazing work you're doing. President
Okay.
Thomas, back to you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We are on to persons wishing to address the school board, and we have 7, so it would be over the 30 minutes. So I'm going to change it to 4 minutes, and I don't need an official vote for that. And just a reminder, issues that affect an individual or particular school should be addressed at that building first. Speakers should focus on their main points and not be repetitive. Personnel matters and complaints that directly or indirectly identify an employee shall not be discussed. And to maintain a civil dialogue, threats and intimidation are not allowed. So first speaker, Florence Thompson.
Good evening, board. My name is Florence Thompson. I'm president of South Dakota Parents Involved in Education. I'm also a retired school psychologist with over 40 years experience in the schools as a psychologist, and those are public schools. I'm also the grandmother of a public school student. I'd like to speak just a little bit shortly about item Q, the request for proposals for superintendent search firm. I believe it's a waste of money to hire a firm to search for a superintendent. First of all, if the person you're hiring isn't smart enough to look at the ads and figure out there's a vacancy and get their application in, I don't think you need them. Also, the last search cost, I believe, somewhere around $50,000. That's money we could have spent for something else. And it brought up a person who was from out of state, who was from a large urban, affluent urban area. And I believe it was a poor fit for our district. And I believe that we would do much better to look in South Dakota and to bring on some of our local people. I mean, we're always saying what a great staff we have. Let's use them. So I would say, save that money. Save that money. Okay, and number 2, I've heard quite a few reports lately of teachers that are just at their wits' end because of student behavior. And I think this is something that the board really needs to look into. And what I would suggest, we're talking about things like students being out of control, throwing desks, assaulting people. It's serious bad behavior. I would suggest that the board conduct a morale survey or something like that to actually get direct feedback from staff, not just teachers, but all staff, and say, what are your working conditions like? Are you happy with your job? Are you going to stay in your job? Are you going to leave? If so, why? I do think that's important information. And I was in a school district where we did a morale study. And what happened, I know this would never happen here, but the building principal actually got some of her people together, and they analyzed the handwriting on the responses. So anything that's done needs to be a direct response to the board, and it needs to be completely anonymous. But I do think it's important to do that because we do want to retain staff, and we do want to have good working conditions, and we do want to have students under control. And that wouldn't be the only issue, I'm sure. But I think it's important for the board to get that whistleblower, that direct feedback. And, not that you're going to take action on each one of those things, but you're going to get a feel for what's going on out there. And I do think apparently it's a serious problem where teachers are thinking, I'm going to get out of here as soon as I can, out of education, because the kids are just out of control. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Jan Mankelson.
Good evening, board members. My comment is in regards to the banned books. It appears that this subject is closed, and I appreciate all of the comments previously made. I especially appreciate Ms. Swiger's ownership of the problem. However, I think an apology is due the English teachers who selected the books based on their expertise. Because of the controversy, they were made to look inept and careless in their selections. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Carolyn Hofer.
District policy defers to the judgment of teachers and librarians. So this is how we get books like Fun Home and Anger is a Gift. Showing images of women performing oral sex on each other or minors and adults masturbating is not a challenging topic. It is not to appeal to higher learning. It is entertaining sexual desires, and to suggest otherwise is misleading. A school librarian recommended the book Anger is a Gift to 6th graders, and I've read that book. It advocates for sex between minors, has lewd sexual dialogue, political activism, and gender ideology. These topics were very important to her. That she promoted the book that aligned with her views and set it on Google Classroom. Some educators are unable to separate their political beliefs from their profession. They're pushing ideologies onto other people's children and opening up the possibility of sex to kids as young as 11, my child included. Aiming books at children with details and images of minors and adults engaging in sex acts is abuse. It rewires brain chemistry. It encourages sex at earlier ages and makes them vulnerable. It blurs the line between acceptable behavior and safety. Sex is part of the world, but teachers are crossing the line when they're pointing kids to it and relying on the judgments of educators without protections in place, without guidelines, has failed. And this is why the district needs a no pornography and no sexual content policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Forrest Cooper.
Hello, board. I voted against the bond issue the last time it was brought up. I didn't know what the purpose of that was. What I basically knew was my taxes were going to go up, and I didn't see any value in that. And so I voted against it. Now, having learned a little bit more about what goes on in the school and some of the challenges, financial and otherwise, I think we need a bond issue for buildings and other things, and we need that bond issue to pass. Now, in order for that to pass, it's going to take a smart educational campaign for the voters in this area in order to see the value in them voting for higher taxes. So I was ignorant, and I didn't realize there was this great need. I thought this school system had this fabulous building, had hundreds of millions of dollars. They were just awash in cash. I was ignorant. Now, if we're going to have another bond issue to generate the money that's needed, I believe, then those people that are in that condition of not being aware of the circumstances this school district is in, they're in a state of ignorance also. And so they need to understand why they should vote for their taxes to increase. So if you do put a bond issue before the public, It needs to be smart. It needs to be a hard-hitting campaign. You need to spend the money to sell this thing and get the 60% of the voters to vote for it.
Thank you. Next speaker, David Newham.
Let me get these papers separated this time. Thanks, everybody. I gotta tell you, half the things, I don't really like talking about the stuff I talk about. But I come here, I show up, I got 8 grandchildren. None of them are in this school district, but I got a basketball hoop in front of my house and all the neighborhood kids come over and play basketball. And they even knock on the door and ask my wife if I can come out and play. And so I show up for them and I show up for all the students and all the teachers that are too intimidated to speak. And that's why I'm here. So I appreciate all the teachers that educate. Absolutely. You know, as I've mentioned before, the National Education Association and its affiliates appear willing to indoctrinate children for the Democratic Party. Florence Thompson, president of South Dakota Parents Involved in Education, recently shared on the connection between some teachers unions and the World Economic Forum, or WEF. This connection to the WEF is one that teachers unions share with the vast majority of the Democratic Party and an increasing number of Republicans. The World Economic Forum and the global elites have no respect for nation states and despise patriots from any nation because their allegiance is to a global government. One of the stated goals of the WEF is to depopulate the world from almost 8 billion people to around 500 million people. This led me to conclude that their reason for gender confusing generations of children is to assist in their depopulation efforts. I believe the depopulation goal is also the reason that we now have many Democrats advocating for abortion till the day of birth for any reason, and some outliers even calling for legalizing infanticide. A few weeks ago, the American Medical Association, the Children's Hospital Association, and the American Academy of Pediatrics sent a letter requesting that the Department of Justice prosecute those of us who question the validity of radical transgender medicine that includes administering puberty blockers, hormone therapies, and experimental gender surgeries on minors. Don't be fooled by the fancy sounding names. Less than 20% of doctors now belong to the American Medical Association. The American Academy of Pediatrics has been left-leaning for over a decade, and I couldn't find much information on the Children's Hospital Association. But it is worth noting that all 3 of these organizations have members that stand to profit handsomely from gender transitioning children. There is also a Democratic lawmaker in Virginia introducing a bill that could charge parents with a felony, strip them of their employment, and put them in prison if they don't endorse their minor child's sex change. So basically, if you have a 12-year-old daughter who wants to have a double mastectomy, and you as the parent object for any reason, you can be prosecuted and imprisoned. Despite what trans activists have insisted, the medical evidence to support these procedures for minors is contested, and medical authorities in Europe have recently turned away from many of these practices. The stories of the victims have been censored, but the truth is starting to get out. Robert Sirico wisely stated that empathy does not grant us the right to distort reality. And it's also worth branding into your memory that in the history of the world, the people that pushed for censorship have never been the good guys. You know, we must continue to speak up no matter the cost. Future generations are depending on us. Authoritarianism is knocking on our door, and we must answer with courage and boldness, and we are the majority. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Rocky Atkinson.
Good evening. I see some new faces this evening, so I'm going to reintroduce myself. I'm Raquel Atkinson, but I go by Rocky. I am a sibling of someone with multiple disabilities, a former Special Olympics volunteer, and I consider myself an advocate. I've worked in the field of disabilities in a variety of capacities, including group home support, one-to-one support of adults and students, as a paraprofessional, and as a special education teacher. To say I have experience is an understatement. I'm also well-versed on the law regarding people with disabilities of all ages, because I choose to seek that knowledge out. I return tonight to continue my monologue about your special education policy because, let's be honest, conversations require interaction. So let's start with the good. Peers for students with disabilities in general education settings, art, music, career technical education, and family and consumer sciences. Let me be really clear, it's not happening, okay? Kids are not included, let's be clear. An example comes from the time that I was teaching good old PE class, one of my favorite to do inclusion with. I know that kinetic learning is most beneficial for at least a handful of my students. PE is also a great place for kids to make friends and learn life skills. For some of my students, it was about the release of energy so they could focus and attend to tasks later on when I asked. In an attempt to give students a safe gym class experience, I wanted to raise awareness. I asked teachers and administration to set expectations that neurotypical kids, particularly the very athletically inclined ones, learn restraint of their own physical abilities to give others an opportunity. When general education teachers told me they'd be more comfortable with me having a conversation about not going 100 when my kids are in class, I went to my administration and made them aware. I was immediately told that it would violate their privacy.
That's time. Thank you. Next speaker, Sarah Gross. You're up. Yep.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Gross. I'm a teacher and a parent in Rapid City. I think I've taught for about 16 years, and I participate in a lot of professional development over the years. I recently heard a quote from a guy named John Lancaster, and he said, "We no longer have debates, but conflicting narratives." And I think we heard some of that this evening, and I want to talk more locally. And so at the last board meeting, Mrs. Weaver suggested that the standards for social studies don't align with social studies exams. That's because there is no social studies test that students take a part in. They do SBAC, NWA, NAEP, but none of those have a social studies component. The only test that students in Rapid City take that gauge social studies is their AP test, as far as I understand. And so I think it's really a funny argument and a funny thing to say, and just kind of shows that we have to be knowledgeable and we have to trust our professionals. And so our AP tests do test social studies, and the proposed social studies standards don't actually align with those AP standards. And so we could be costing a lot of our students thousands of dollars, because instead of passing the AP exam for like $103 or $100 or whatever it is these days, they might be required to take a whole course if our standards for those AP courses don't align with the AP nationally. Although it wasn't for social studies, I've sat on a standards revision committee. It was about 6 years ago when my son, who was outside, was just a baby. And it was kind of a huge deal because I had to take him along with me to peer, and, you know, I had to have childcare while I was in this meeting. And it was a lot of work to organize my family life in order to participate. And I think that might be why I'm kind of still on the social studies kick, even though I'm not a social studies teacher, because the process discounted South Dakota teachers and their professional knowledge by throwing out those standards, all of that time and energy that people chose to give. And they were probably paid for it, but you have to arrange more than just for pay. You have to have childcare, time, drive time, all of those things. And so I'm really, I think, frustrated with the governor. And I think with I don't understand how people can say that the standards had a lot of opposition, because they were cut off prior to the 4 public meetings and the comment collection period. So there's no telling how much opposition actually existed on them when a few loud voices may have led the political agenda. I worry about our most capable, experienced staff stepping away from the profession because of the polarization of our work. This version of the social studies standards, from my point of view, is inappropriate for our students. Just like Mrs. Weaver, I've been asking our community members to read and discuss the social studies standards. I would love to chat and actually debate, like that quote says, with folks, because I feel like there are many carrying a narrative, and I just don't see that narrative in my work in the schools, the indoctrination, that kind of thing. I see a lot of teachers teaching A and what the sound an A makes. I see number sense. I just don't see the same things. And so my question for the board is, when will that study session be? I know you mentioned it, and so I'm curious when that study session will be, because we have some real experts. I'm not one of them on social studies, but I know that they are in our district and could really tell you a lot about these social studies standards. Next, I'm excited to hear from the student representatives. I remember last year that the board removed the policy, and so I'm also curious if we have a new policy. I haven't seen it and maybe I missed it. And then the facilities study session was awesome, and I hope that many people watch it. Thank you.
All right. We are on to other. Do any board members have other? I moved it up in case anybody wants to address any comments. I do want to comment one thing on the bond issue. The district itself, just so people are aware, cannot legally campaign for use our taxpayer money to raise taxpayer money. So it would have to be somebody else that campaigns for it. Just facts. Any others? Oh, thank you for joining. Yes, Jamie Clapham.
Good evening, everyone. And I had, let me see, where am I writing? Oh, yeah. So I just wanted a couple things. One, I wanted a very brief comment on the behavior, and it's very much on our radar. And one of the comments regarding as far as, you know, surveys, and I fully support surveys, but also we're out there. I've been in 10 schools in a month. So I've talked to a lot of teachers. I know about their concerns. So it's not just sending out a survey, it's about being present. And that's really important. And so that is happening on a weekly basis. Also in that, I wanted to give a couple of shout outs, visiting some schools. So at Grandview Elementary, their 4th and 5th grade combo class was really impressive. I have never seen 4th graders who said, oh, you know, we use PBL, project-based learning. And I was like, wow, no, I didn't know that at all. They were a really impressive group. And at East Middle School, I know sometimes, a lot of times we talk about the, you know, the life skills and basics that need to be in school. they have an entire cafe that's completely run by students to the point of they order the groceries, they make the recipes, they make the menu, they do the marketing, they deliver their food. And this is 6th through 8th graders. And I was absolutely just wowed by them and the great business skills they learned. A little shout out to Mr. Talley. Multiple principals have said thank you so much for covering their building so that they can do things that they need with their family or use their vacation time. And that's awesome to see that support from administration, and it is appreciated. And that seeing Canyon Lake, you know, we talk about the challenges, and it was even more crystal clear to me the space challenges that we have and just the urgency that we need to address that.
All right, Mr. Berkland.
Thank you. So I just wanted to talk about kind of some of the same things that Jamie did, but before I get into that, first thing I just want to talk about is Bishop Carr talked about this a little bit last week too, but when we get up here to the public forum, there's kind of a duty to make sure that we're not making unproven claims. These claims about books and about just transgenderism and all of these things, there's not scientific backing to that. So anyway, back to the good stuff. So as Jamie mentioned, we have been out visiting some schools. Some I wanted to shout out were Rapid Valley Elementary, which I went to like 20 years ago. First off, there were people there who recognized me, which I thought was amazing that they knew me from when I was 10. I saw the same thing at Meadowbrook. So that just kind of shows how much our teachers do care that they still knew me 20 years later. But specifically their level 4 classroom, we went into the K2 classroom and then the 3-5 classroom, and the vast difference that those teachers have made with those students. The K2 classroom was incredibly chaotic. I don't know how they do it. I admire them so much. And then the 3-5, they were talking about syllables and learning things. So they were really, really making some positive changes there. The second one I wanted to shout out was the Southwest Library. I didn't even know libraries did lessons. It's been a while since I've been in a library, honestly. But I saw a library lesson and she was teaching how to use the search function in the coolest way. She was using like a Halloween game where they were all competing together. Something incredibly boring, if you ask me, sorry. Incredibly boring, but she was making it fun. And then the last one, a special place in my heart, was Meadowbrook Math. I saw a teacher doing a math lesson where they were decomposing numbers and they were sharing their thinking and they were communicating and collaborating. So I could go on and on. We talk a lot about the issues that we have, and those issues are important, but there was also some really, really fantastic things going on. And kind of relating back to that behavior, yes, there are behavior issues going on, but it's not chaos in every classroom every day, all the time. There is some really, really great things still happening out there. So we hear you on the behavior. We're working on it. We understand that this is probably one of the worst years behavior-wise that we've ever had. But I do want to make sure that our community knows that it's not kids hanging from the ceiling and punching each other every day. There is really great things going on.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to, under Mrs. Swiggert's attempt to talk about appreciation, there's actually 3 people I like to verbally appreciate in our meeting. The first person is Mr. Sassy, who is the chief financial officer. I got to remember the organizational chart I approved. Chief financial officer and chief operating officer. And I just want to thank you for your hard work and for all that you do. And when you talk about money, it's not easy, and people are very funny. Trust me, I pastor a church. People are very funny about where their money goes and what happens to it. And it's just to see how much you have to do. And when you're on Zoom, it's so delightful to hear your kids in the background, and you got a lot going on and you're doing a wonderful job. So I want to appreciate you for that. The second person I want to appreciate is President Thomas for the work that she's doing as board president. And unless you're on the board, you have no idea the amount of personal time that it takes to write policies, think about policies, read all the agenda, make the agenda, and all the things that she does for free on her own personal time. And you may not agree with it or like the decisions or the things that she does, but I think you have to appreciate the work that she's put in for, not for herself, but for the kids and for the district. So I want to appreciate you and thank you for that. I wish Mr. Cooper was still here, because I so appreciated his comment about the bond and saying that he was ignorant, and I think he used that word, that he was ignorant in his information about his decision and not voting for the bond. And had he known what was really going on in the district, he would have voted another way. And so that was actually encouraging to me, that if the district on our next attempt, that we would actually get out the information and the reality of how things are, facilities and the other things that we're trying to do with the bond. I think we'll be successful, or I pray that we're successful. The last thing is one of the reasons why we moved the other on the agenda is so that we can have dialogue, especially when people who are talking about the persons wishing to address the board. So you have to be present to have dialogue. So it would be appreciated that if you want dialogue, that if you make a comment, that you stay to hear what comments and feedback that we have to you, because we can't talk to you if you just come to the mic and then you leave. So if you're really interested in dialogue, stay. And the other is up high enough so it's only 6:15, so that you're not waiting another 2 hours for the end of the meeting. So that's one of the reasons why we did that. And one last quick thing, I don't know who this would go to, but I so appreciated on our sharing success, the young students that were here. And I just wish we had a certificate or a pencil or something to actually give to them so that they can take home and say, wow, you know, the board gave this to me, or whoever gives it, and I was recognized. So
Thank you, Bishop.
Bishop Carr, I was not able to get them certificates because I did not get the names in advance, but they
Okay.
will get something.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Okay, I don't see any others. So we'll move on to student representative reports, and we will start with Mr. Big Crow from Rapid City High School.
Hello and good afternoon, board. Thank you for showing up again, and we'll dive right in and get started with the current events at Rapid City High School. So as I shared last meeting, Rapid City High School has moved to a quarter schedule, meaning that we're nearing the end of our first term already. October 31st will be the last day of the quarter and the end of our first 4 classes and the start of our 4 new classes, which also means next week we'll be finishing our finals and taking final exams. With the addition of our quarter changes, we also be bringing an end of the quarter learner recognition assembly, with our first assembly being on October 31st. Allowing for staff and students to gather in the historic theater, where students will be congratulated for following the school expectations of being respectful, present, and courageous. The Rushmore Rotary Club will also be there to present the start of the Rapid City High School School Spirit clothing line. And to continue on this Friday, the freshman seminar learners will be attending Freshman Impact. This is a day-long field trip that brings together local, county, state, and federal resources to educate the students, parents, and staffs and school staff on destructive teenage issues and their consequences. We're excited to send our freshmen and look forward to hearing about what they learn. I would also like to give a shout out to the staff of Rapid City High School for their efforts in fundraising to the support of the Black Hills Powwow Awards pool. Rapid City High School was able to collect $190 from our small staff. And last but not least, next week, Rapid City High School learners will have the opportunity to take the ASVAB test on October 26th. This test provides learners with valuable career aptitude information. And in closing, I would like to remind you of our school-wide expectations at Rapid City High School. Be respectful, present, and courageous. Respectfully submitted, Kevin Bickrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Students, would you please remember to pull your mic about 6 inches from you?
Megan Ju from Stevens High School.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Once again, my name is Megan Ju, and I'm Stevens High School's representative. So to start off, a big congratulations to our boys soccer team. This past weekend, they competed in T and they won the state championship 4-1. And additionally, 2 of our team members, Ryan Gahn and Keegan Blaha, were named the best offensive and defensive players of the year. And another big congratulations to our girls tennis team, who also brought home the state championship title for the 2nd year in the row, and they beat their competitors by over 100 points. And so this weekend, there's state cheer and dance competition as well as cross-country state, and so we're wishing them luck with their competitions. The Stevens Fine Arts program has also been very busy this year. The marching band went to the U.S. Band Quad State Regional in Sioux Falls this weekend and placed in the top 3rd. The marching band has also been performing at all of our home football games, which is always a highlight. Last Wednesday, many Stevens Orchestra and band students auditioned for the South Dakota All-State Orchestra, and out of everybody who auditioned, 30 students were selected for the All-State Orchestra. The All-State Orchestra concert is always an exciting event, and so we congratulate the students who were selected. The concert will be in Sioux Falls on October 29th this year. There will be a blood drive on October 28th at Stevens, and any students over 16 can give blood with a parent consent form. Stevens is also looking at redesigning the commons area to make it a more comfortable area for students to work on homework or hang out, and Mrs. Hafner is looking to ask the CAD students to help with this project. This weekend, the Student Council and FBLA have partnered to put on a fun Halloween event for all the students called Trunk or Treat. They're encouraging all the clubs to decorate a car to participate, and they will be giving out prizes to the best decorated car. And that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
I do have one question. Wonder if maybe Mr. Talley can ask Mrs. Hafer to have the Fine Arts, the drama club come in from Stevens and show us what they will be playing as well. That would be kind of cool. So thank you. And we are on to Laura Jensen from Central High School. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm, like you just said, Laura Jensen. Good evening, everybody, board members and all that came out here tonight and stayed to listen to us talk. I'm always sad when they leave before I talk. I'm like, only here for one thing, guys. Just kidding. I'm here to listen to you too. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge it was great to see people talking about dyslexia because I'm dyslexic. I just found that out this summer. Crazy that I made it to senior year and just found that out, but I did it. I would like to start off with a congratulations to our 25 Central High School Orchestra students that made it into All-State Orchestra, and special honors to Kaylee Tupper, a friend of mine. She's a sophomore and she got first chair viola. So I'm really proud of her. The students will be part of a 120-piece orchestra that performs, like you just said, in Sioux Falls at the Denny Stanford Premier Center on October 29th. Along with All-State Choir, which is what I am going for. So I'm excited about that part too. As much as I'd love to recognize them all, I am really horrible with names, and there's 25 of them, so I will not be saying them all, but if you see them or you meet someone who's in it, please give them a congratulations from me and yourself, because that'd be great. Mr. Knowles and all of them work really, really hard to play at that level, and it's really challenging to get into All-State Orchestra. All right. Next, I'd like to point out that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Central's Freshman House will be having a competition between chorus to raise money for WAVY. WAVY is a local organization that provides temporary shelter, food, support services, and survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and trafficking. Last year, we raised and donated over $740. And now for our big announcement from the Performing Arts Department, of which I found on SPEC's Facebook page because I didn't know until 3:30 because that's when they announced it. So Rapid City Central is one of 51 high schools in the United States to be awarded the first performance rights of Disney's full-length Broadway version of Frozen. Wow. And they will be performing it on April 20th, 21st, 22nd of 2023. So
excellent.
I'm excited. It'll be fun. Next, update on Team Rowan. Rowan is on Gwen Stefani's team. She won her one-on-one battle, and I think that's all I have for Rowan, but I'm really excited to see how far she'll go. Yeah. Central High School is proud to have implemented an academic intervention program where all students who need help may either self-select or be assigned morning intervention time by their teachers, and this service is available every morning from 7:45 to 8:10 a.m., Monday through Friday. Just study time with your teachers in the morning. We have our choir practices for state at that time. It's really needed. And now for our upcoming activities. Tonight, there's a band concert at 7, of which I will be attending right after this, if I'm on time. We'll see. And then Wednesday, tomorrow, there's a regional student council meeting. There's grad time for everyone, freshmen through seniors, but seniors do something different. Kind of confusing, not gonna lie. Thursday, we have a varsity football game versus Stevens at 6 p.m. and our theme is Ski Bum for Central. Friday, there's a choir concert at 7 p.m. and there's a volleyball tournament at 4 p.m. and the theme is Pink Out. Saturday, there's a volleyball tournament at 9 a.m. and the theme is Purple Out in support of domestic violence. That's why we chose that one. And then state competitive cheer and dance is this Saturday, I want to say. And then state cross country is also Saturday. I will also be going to that. I'm really excited. So that is all I have for you guys. Oh, one last thing. October 28th is midterms. So that's all.
Thank you very much. All very good reports. Okay, no conflict of interest waiver has been turned in. So moving on to item 10, first reading of policy and procedure. I need a motion. Jim and Deb. Discussion. Mr. Talley, would you just briefly tell us about these? I think it was you that, just a few minor changes, right?
Right, I'm gonna have Director Seals
Okay.
update you here.
Thank you. I don't think so.
Thank you. Mr. Talley convened a group to go through policies, which is a little bit different than it's been in the past. I just had all the I policies and they'd get thrown on your desk and you were told to read them and see if there were any changes. So I was happy to work with Mr. Talley and elementary, middle, and high school principals to review the first 6 that we brought forward. All 6 had minor changes, but only 3 made tonight's board agenda. So there's some I policies waiting for the policy committee right around the corner. These ones that are in front of you tonight had the least amount of change. In order on your agenda, IHB is recommended class size. Before it just said class size. And we know that we are not always able to meet our expectations for class sizes, given, enrollment patterns and staffing. And so while we still want to maintain the up to 25 through grade 3 and 30 beyond, we know that's not always possible. So we thought that that was the appropriate action to take. And then it had mentioned that in grades 6 through 8, the enrollment was 30. That's incorrect. It really should have read 6 through 12. So that's the other change.
Okay.
Questions on IHB?
I guess I don't have a question as much as like a comment. Recommended worries me a little bit. It feels a little too lax. I would prefer maybe something at the end that says, kind of like you said, I understand that we're not following this and we talked last week, last meeting about we need to make sure we're following policy. So I understand the change, but I guess I would prefer something more along the lines of at the end of it, like exceptions may be made due to staffing and enrollment rather than recommended. Recommended just feels a little lax to me.
I wonder if we have other policy that says if you do not have, I think there might be another policy that relates to the teacher, right, with the class size.
Boy, I don't know. I've been working on policy for 15 years for this district and I can't think of it.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of something else.
Yeah, I would say I'd agree with Michael, just to, we talk about, of course, like our students are important, our teachers are important. And for policy to stand, like, I could see it being read like recommended and saying, well, we could just push 2 more, like, not that we would do that, but I think it leaves too much of a gray area. And I could see definitely as a teacher saying, oh, well, now because it's recommended, we can push 34, we can push it, then like, where does that stop? So I think just like slightly stronger language might be ideal as well.
Stronger language that we're flexible based on enrollment and staffing, or?
Well, like saying that it's definite to like definitively the exception, like, because when it says recommended, it sort of leaves more of a like, well, it's recommended, so just if we want to, not saying like this is the exception, obviously not the rule. And so just making that more apparent in the way it reads.
So after you get through the 25 and the 30, I could add a piece that reads, in the event of staffing shortages or increased enrollments, et cetera. Is that okay with you, Mr. Talley?
Yeah, we can definitely change the wording to meet your desire, but I just want to emphasize that we do need to have that flexibility. Enrollment's tricky because of families that are in and out of certain attendance areas. One of the things that we really tried, 2 things we really tried to do is to really make sure that we weren't placing more kids than absolutely necessary in classes, but we had to take into account also the forced transfer issue. What we didn't want to do was force students and families to drive their children to another school somewhere else when they didn't have the means to do it. And that's an important issue in a lot of our schools right now. So Overall, our numbers are pretty steady. There are a few sections at various schools that are averaging a little bit over the recommended class size, but that's probably going to be something we'll encounter for the foreseeable future. So we just want to be able to have that flexibility, but also, keep that safeguard in place there. But to the point of the policy, it just said class size. So I think there was some misinterpretation out there that once we hit that mark, we couldn't go one student over or two students over, which again is going to be a problem if we're telling a family you need to move your kid to another school.
Right.
It's not acceptable either. So
It read like that was the policy and it was a hard number. And then when we put 27 in a room, we're breaking our own policy. So it definitely needs to change, but if it's the will of the board to have it read class size and then just have that extra language, I'm happy to do it.
Deb has her hand up. Go ahead.
So I got an email from some teachers from Knollwood, and they're concerned about going with numbers instead of based on, the class size based on numbers rather than need, especially for this in particular, I believe it's kindergarten. They're worried about that they'll have 20 kids when the need shows that they can't support 20 kids.
Right. And out of our general fund, we don't add additional staff based on need, but that's why those schools are identified as Title I schools. In fact, Knollwood was the last school I taught at, and we had additional classroom positions that we hired out of our title funds. The district doesn't do that. If they have 100 third graders, they get 4 teachers, but Christina Henry can choose to hire an additional third grade teacher to reduce that class size.
So what you're saying is this won't affect Knollwood because it's a
No.
title school.
Right.
Okay, they're concerned about that.
Yes. Yep.
I just want.
So at Meadowbrook, we really are full. And they stay that way. There are no other funds for a school that's non-title that is, full to the seams. But all of our Title I schools, which that's 9 of our schools, have that opportunity.
Just want to make sure that her concern is addressed.
Mhm.
If you would, maybe think of at least another way of saying it that still allows you the flexibility. If not, I'm okay with leaving it as is. So
I think we can go back and change the language.
Okay. Yeah, I'll touch base with Mike.
I'm all for flexibility. I want to make that clear. I feel like this is too far the other way. Maybe this is my non-compliant nature, like we talked about. But when I see recommendation, that doesn't mean anything to me then. I could do whatever I want. I could put 50 kids in a class if I want when I see recommendation. So somewhere in between there of, I understand that we need to put 27 in sometime, and I agree we should put 27 in sometimes. But our goal is still 25. We're trying our best to keep those class sizes small because I just worry that if we say recommended, that leaves us open to, not that any of us necessarily would, but does leave the policy open to making huge class sizes.
So considering I scored the same as you on rule following, it seems I would have caught that, but I didn't. So yeah, we'll look at it.
would you go ahead and move on to the other two?
Yes, I'm going to jump to the concert here in a minute
Okay.
as well. So independent study. I've chaired instructional council for the 9 years that I've been in this position, 10 years, and never once has an independent study course come to us for approval. That's something that's done locally at the building. I think Mr. Talley can speak to that too. So again, it's just a matter of making the policy match the practice so that we're not in opposition of our policy that's approved by the board.
Perfect.
So Jocelyn Hafner or Principal Seals now would not let an independent study run that wasn't appropriate, but they are the gatekeeper on that.
Okay. Any questions? Go ahead.
So that was just I did want to clarify and understand. So when I look at the policy, it says moving the instructional council, which I get, that makes sense. Where does the oversight in it just says the meet district requirements? So is it the administrator and the teacher? Is it the administrator, teacher, other? It's not clear here, so I didn't know
So the principal would be the final approver. I mean, I approved hundreds of those over the years at Central, but it's consultation between the teacher, the counselor, and the principal, with the counselor determining what, if anything, is needed credit wise, and the teacher, lending themselves in terms of the level of knowledge and what the requirements are to ensure that the student is successful in completing the independent study. We don't want to set students up for failure if they're unable to handle the course. So that group, in consultation with the student and the parent, makes that joint decision and the principal is the final determiner. So it's putting that in the hands of the building administration rather than through a policy or through instructional council.
So it might be good to just like put that if I like as a parent, maybe a little, oh, well, who decides? Like, can I just read this? I can't really tell. So like if we just somewhere, you know, like where it says, you know, district requirements to be said as determined by building administrator, teacher, it would just be clear.
Independent study is offered at the option of the building administrator is the first point. Is that where you'd like it clarified?
Well, no, like, so where it says must be district requirements, like, so to me, like, the buck stops, like, who determines the requirements of the building? I'm not sure. So if it said the district requirement as agreed upon by administrator, counselor, teacher.
Mhm. Perfect. I can add that.
Okay.
We're moving on.
Yep.
Upward and onward, IKA grading systems under definitions, just adding elementary to 3A. Just because of the pilot work on evidence-based grading. And because the descriptors that are used in B, C, D, and E, we thought that it was worthwhile to note that it's elementary only because the descriptors used on that report card are different than the descriptors identified by the pilot teachers for evidence-based grading. So it's just a clarification. Couple grammatical issues in G and H. Under reporting procedures, while there will be reports that go home at the semester, the truth is we report to families daily and they can access their students' current grades and missing assignments in Skyward at any time. So Mr. Talley recommended we make that change. And then finally, there's a list of policies that we require administrators to cover with their certified and other staff at the start of each school year. We didn't feel like this one was the one that was required to be covered. The one that talks about missing assignments and the ability to make up and the fact that you can't deduct beyond 40%, that's the one that really has the meat that needs to be covered, not this.
Okay. All right. If you make those changes and bring them back, they'll be under the consent agenda and then we won't have to have this discussion again. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, now moving on to the approval of the consent agenda. Does anybody
Madam,
want?
I need a vote on that.
Oh, we do. You're right. I'm so sorry. We had a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I don't know what I'd do without you, Shirley. Okay, moving on to approval of consent agenda. Does anyone want anything pulled?
I do.
What?
11D and 11V. V is in Victor.
Anybody else?
Yes, I like R pulled.
All right, and I need to pull O. Any others? Okay, with D, O, R, and V pulled, I need a motion and a second for the rest.
I'll motion.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. I need a motion and a second for D. Jim,
Second.
Troy. All right, discussion.
I'm trying to find it here. It's just a really little, it says, the agreement, it talks about through the school year, but then it says commencing on June 30th, 2023, but it says it's referring to the school year 2022, 2023. So I don't know if that's just like a typographical error or if I'm reading it incorrectly, because it seems to me it should commence before that if the agreement is for the school year, unless we were talking about like a summer program. So it's just the way, they said that the dates don't really match in the way it's.
And we don't have, go ahead.
Right, so, yeah, that's probably a typo, more than likely, but I can check and I didn't catch that one, so.
I just figure since I'm like, we're spending money, we should probably make sure we're.
Right, absolutely.
doing it
Yeah,
correctly, so
I
that's-
can check on that, bring it back.
What do you think, Mr.
I don't know unless
Sassy?
you Have any other information?
Do you
Mr.
know?
Sassy, I don't.
I do not right now, ladies and gentlemen. I also didn't catch that. So thank you, Mrs. Clapham, for.
Mrs. Talley is on Zoom if she would like to chime in.
With your permission, Madam President, I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, please, go ahead.
So it is correct. Everything in here is correct. And when we say commence on June 30th, we actually, through the Sheriff's Department, the reporting center is providing educational services to students. But our school year ends on June 30th, our fiscal school year, which includes some of those summer programs. Remember, these are students that are referred to truancy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and so according to the MOU, we revise that each year. And so this particular one will end on June 30th of 2023.
So I think it's now that I'm open, I have two different attachments. One that says exactly what Mrs. Talia is saying, and another one that says the commencing June 3rd. So I guess I'm not sure which one.
Right. I'm assuming that the Sheriff's Department on their, and that can be easily amended with them, that because this is their MOU. So I will ask Dr. Conroy, Justin Conroy, to take it back and just get the date switched. If you look at the information sheet, those are the correct dates.
So yes, so the one I received as an attachment email with the Pennington County is correct. It's the one that if you click on the attachment, like on the board agenda, that's not correct.
You are correct, because I just looked at that and noticed that I'll have Dr. Conroy go back to the Sheriff's Department and change that date, but the correct one that we approve is the board informational item, and that is, it does go through the end of June.
If the date does need to be changed, we can do that right now. I need a motion to change the date and then a second, and we approve that and then approve the agreement.
So perfect, thank you.
Sorry, I have a question before then.
Troy and Jim.
Is the date wrong or is the word commence wrong? What's the issue? Is it 4/22/23?
Yes.
Yes, so it's the word commencing that's wrong.
So
correct. So we need to
Yeah,
amend
it should
that.
say ending.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what this
So that's
motion
what the
is.
motion
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
So
Thank
all
you.
those in favor of that motion?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Now onto the agreement, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, moving on to O. I need someone to make a motion to cross out one of the names that was on here for retirement, Samantha Wentworth. She is not retiring. Jim? Deb? And with that crossing out, I need those were the approval of O with that. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And moving on to R, discussion. Oh, I need a motion.
So moved.
Troy and Jim. All right, discussion.
I just wanted to pull this just to make a personal comment. I'll be voting no on this item because I think it sends a wrong message to the students that go to the school, Rapid City High School, for there to be alcohol on premise. And so I understand that the students aren't there. I understand they're adults. I understand all that. And so it's not a referendum on alcohol, but I just personally think it's a poor message to have it there at the school. And I think a stronger message for the board would be to disapprove it, to say that drink apple juice or Diet Coke, or I drink Coke Zero. So, I mean, and it's not necessary for the functioning of this organization. And I think a better message would be to deny it. So that's why I pulled it.
Any other discussion? Go ahead, Jim.
So this is for the theater, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so are you aware that part of the agreement to get into this, when that building was built, that Fine Arts gave over $5 million to the school, and this is part of the original agreements? Are you aware that what you're messing here with is the business of the Fine Arts to conduct business when there are no children in school, and that what you're doing is you are dealing with something and the ramifications of things that have been in place since that theater part was built. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I understand clearly where you're coming from. That conversation was present many times at the beginning. But due to the fact that they contributed such a huge amount and got involved and made absolute promises that that would not be there when the kids are going to be there. That was the only reason why we approved it back in the day. So I do support where you're coming from, but I'm going back in history as to why I will be voting for this.
And I appreciate that. And so to answer your question, I don't think their $5 million is more valuable than the message of it, the message that could be sent to those, especially those at-risk kids that are, and kids anywhere that have the problem themselves, that come from homes with the problems. It's not in any way necessary for the functioning of that organization. And I will take the hit. If I had the $5 million, I'd give it back to them to not have them have alcohol on the premises.
Jackie Talley.
Yes.
You have your hand up. Was it from earlier?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was wondering why you might be wanting to talk about that. Mr. Berkland, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that this is under policy, and as long as they're following the policy, I feel as though it is our duty to say yes. And if we want to amend the policy, that's a whole nother discussion, but these requests are made per that policy, and I think we're just deciding, are these requests made per that policy? And the answer to that is yes.
Any other discussion? Yes.
Let me just say, so if that's the case, then why are we voting on it if
we're deciding, is this under policy or not?
It's not under policy.
Well, it says right there under policy.
Well, under the policy, it's allowable, but it has to be voted on.
Yeah, so we have to give them, so we're giving them the approval.
Right.
Which we can choose not to give them the approval.
Yeah.
Is all I'm saying.
Right. Any other discussion? Go ahead and do a roll call.
Kate?
Yes.
Troy?
No.
Deb?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-1.
And moving on to V, addendum, no before. I need a motion and a second.
I'll motion.
Jamie and Deb. All right, discussion.
See, my only question is reading it. So this is the cybersecurity. It says presented before the board would enable the district to access unlimited training for up to 60 users for 36 months. My question for clarification was, do we know how we're going to choose the users? And secondly, can the 60 users change from year to year, or are these 60 chosen and they are the chosen ones and they have to be for all 36 months?
Madam President, that is my baby. So, yeah, so very quickly, just a little bit of background on this situation. So, as we have tried to adjust, and as you'll hear next week in the joint presentation between Mr. Daniel and myself, in responding to cybersecurity and trying to develop resources to protect and respond. One of the things that we took a look at was our current training system. So we have a current training system named Vector Solutions. The district does the majority of their compliance training through things that have to be done on a yearly basis, bloodborne pathogens, those types of things. Vector does not have a robust section for cybersecurity. They have 2 to 3 essentially courses that are very limited. And so as I reached out to our contact person with Vector, had a good conversation with them. Actually, they use Know Before, and they actually recommended Know Before. So that's what prompted us to look at that as a source. my thought in the initial idea here, is to build a really robust training program, initially around our business office folks, since they are really the front line of a lot of these attacks, given the amount of information they deal with and the amount of attempts that they are seeing in terms of cybersecurity attacks. And then essentially building outward from there to the folks that are linked closely to that business function, both at the buildings in terms of schools and our facilities. Obviously, there are a good amount of people out in the buildings, secretarial, clerical, that are dealing with invoices and emails and requests for information, requests for payment, all those different things. And into our IT department and some of those folks, initially work with a more limited rollout. So that's where the number of 60 came from. Those do not have to be the same users year over year. We are not necessarily even limited to 60 users. It's just that if we go over 60 users for the term of that agreement, they'll bill us basically. They'll say, okay, you had 65 people at the end of the year that you access the training system for. What Shane and I have talked about quite a lot is really the plan forward will depend on what that rollout looks like, how user-friendly it is, how much effort it takes to scale it out to our buildings and get it off the ground. We may come back in 3 months and say, hey, this has worked amazing. We actually want to roll it out system-wide, and we want to provide some level of training to all of our employees, which will be the plan at some point along this continuum. But at this point, the idea was really a limited rollout so that we could really get intense in terms of training those people. So, for example, the business office folks will have a much more intensive training, both on a yearly basis and a quarterly basis than maybe a teacher would, or someone less connected to some of those functions where they're being attacked more often. So hopefully I answered your question.
That answered it perfectly and thoroughly. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Hi.
All those opposed? All right, moving on to the report from
Madam
the.
President,
Yes,
I'd like to interrupt
Sure.
and the students that want to attend their school
Yes.
function tonight, you might want to release them.
you may go. And if you need to go and nobody says anything, please don't feel bad about getting up and sneaking out. So now moving on to the report of the Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you, Madam President, board members, for the opportunity to fill in for Mr. Swigert here tonight. I want to echo the sentiments that were discussed earlier with a couple of our board members and our student representatives. There are a lot of good things going on in our school district. I'm just really excited and happy about all the things that are happening at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school. There's some phenomenal and very innovative things going on in schools right now. I want to commend our principals and teachers for problem solving. We obviously have our challenges, no doubt about that. We've talked about those things, but just having our administration at the buildings and our teachers and our staff really step up, covering for each other, helping each other. Everybody wants everybody to succeed, and I think that's something that's a rarity, I think, sometimes in public education. So those are the unseen things behind the curtain, so to speak, that we don't get to talk about a lot. But I appreciate board members going out to schools and touching base with everybody out there, and not only listening to concerns, but also seeing for yourself the many great things that are happening. Obviously, with the reports from our young people here from the high schools, there are a lot of fun things going on in the high schools. So appreciate you guys being here and giving your report. The second thing I want to talk about is just the board retreat on Friday. I just want to say thank you to the Board of Education and all of the directors and administration that met on Friday. I thought it was a very productive day, very fun day. There was a lot of serious discussion about our challenges, but there was also a lot of reflection. There was a lot of opportunity to I think have some discussion about some positive things that are happening. But what I really took from it is just the will of everybody to get into problem solving mode. We're not going to solve problems if we just don't work together and tackle them head on. And I appreciate the courage and the boldness and the tenacity that everybody takes to that approach of let's get together, let's put our heads together, let's solve these problems. And I like some of the things that we're doing in our district right now in that regard. So with that, just a few things to update you on from my office. Report cards, state report cards are out. They are on the website. We will put that information together in a more thorough presentation for all of you. There are some good things and there are some challenges like every school. What I can tell you from my perspective and just glancing at what we're doing or how we've done is we've weathered the pandemic years, a couple of years better than I thought we would. We obviously graduation rates are a concern right now, but that was to be expected. You know, what I realized at Central a couple of years ago with just the amount of kids that went into the distance learning program and all the kids that went to homeschool, especially at the secondary level when you need credits to graduate, is that when those students come back, they're going to be a year or two behind. So it's going to take some time. That doesn't mean they won't finish. I mean, we can look at our completer rates too, but that was to be expected. You know, we are like most schools across the country, we took a big hit in math. That's kind of I think streamlined but we're doing some things. You know, we have the TLI office is doing a really good job of. We brought some people in from Carnegie Math. They're doing site visits. They're in classrooms. They're working with teachers and principals to make math a better experience at the middle school level. And we have the elementary math adoption that's forthcoming. So we're going to really focus and emphasize mathematics this year. And so we'll just keep moving forward with that. But we'll send that information out, some data forthcoming on that. I can share some good news. We recently received our ACT report. There are 5 areas: English, math, reading, science, and the composite, which is the overall score. And we are right about the state average for English, and we are above the state average in math, reading, science, and our overall composite score. So there's some really good 5-year trend data there to be proud of. And again, we'll share more of that at a later time. We are above the national average in all 5 areas. So for Rapid City Schools, that's some good news. And we'll talk more about that later. School improvement status. We do have 4 schools that were identified under the state system for accountability as being in school improvement. That's down from 9 schools that we had 2 years ago. So schools are doing some really good work out there to get out of status, but they're primarily identified in one small subgroup, right? So the rules apply to every single subgroup. It's the overall scores, and then it's each individual subgroup that has to continue to make progress. So what's happening right now is those schools are working with the state. The state has assigned every school that's in school improvement gets assigned a person from the state that works directly with them, and my office as well. So we're gonna continue that process and work with those schools to hopefully get out of school improvement. We have some principal trainings coming up. We are doing a progress monitoring training. It's all part of our kind of alignment efforts. All as I talked about before, all of our schools have written school improvement plans and really focusing on goals that are going to help their schools improve. And so there's a monitoring process that goes along with that. We haven't done this before in the district, but so it's a learning experience for all of us, but we're going to be providing some training for our principals on Thursday. And then we're also looking down the road to start a principal leadership academy sometime after the new year. I think this is, I've talked about, I think with board leadership, this is something that's really sorely needed in our district. We have great principals, but I feel like personally, if we're not giving them the training they need and the opportunity to become better leaders through our efforts of professional development, then we're failing them and I'm failing them. So we want to build that capacity. I was talked about earlier of really building within. And we have a lot of great leaders, up and coming leaders. We have a lot of teachers that have moved into principalship and are now principals in our district. And so we want to continue on with that work and moving forward with that. Director Seals talked a little bit about kind of the policy cleanup. I mean, these policy revisions are primarily under I for instruction and S for students. These aren't wholesale policy changes, they're just cleanup. What I learned as a principal over the years is, as I read through a lot of these policies, a lot of the language in there was obsolete or it wasn't common practice anymore. So we want to go through those policies, all of them, to make sure that they reflect what we're actually doing in the buildings and what our needs are. So you'll continue to see a lot of these small edits coming forward as we move through those areas. Just some good news to report on the new academy model. Director Carroll and his staff and the CTE teachers have worked extremely hard making a lot of edits to this model. It is very complex, but it is very good work. And so we had a meeting today with that group of teachers, and they've just done some outstanding work getting that model and those pathways where we want to see them, and continuing on with the great courses and emphasizing specific courses that we can continue to build upon. We're not going to add anything new at this point. We're going to focus on the courses that we have in the model. And some exciting news is the state is putting out it's called an innovative technology grant. It is under Perkins. We can submit for up to $250,000 in innovative technology. There is some really good stuff out there that will really help support our academy, primarily simulators in different areas. So we're looking at some big pieces of technology equipment that we're going to apply for. Not sure if we'll get it, but it's available. So we're going to be bringing that information forward here in the next couple of weeks. And then I'll just touch a little bit on evidence-based grading. We're going to be going out to the high schools and meeting with EBG teachers and teacher leaders and getting some feedback and kind of continuing with that process. Our goal is to put forth a plan for the upcoming school year, which includes adding courses to that model. So there's going to be some work that we're going to be focusing on there. And then the last thing, there's a group of leaders in the district that will be going to Sioux Falls later on this week. We are going to be looking at some innovative programming. This is kind of aligned to some of the comments that were made earlier about discipline. That is a big issue in the district right now. And you know, what we want everybody to know is this is one of those big problems, complex problems that hasn't really been talked about or addressed in the manner that it probably should have over the years. So we want to look at what other school districts are doing innovative wise, because as I've talked about, you know, with students that are struggling in school right now with behavioral issues, are what we have at our disposal is toleration or suspension, and we don't have anything in between. So what we're finding out is districts are starting to put more emphasis and resources in alternative programming so that kids through a process can be referred to a program that will help them with their behavior, to teach replacement behaviors and to integrate them back into their schools where they can be successful, as opposed to just suspending them out of school. So we're going to be looking at a couple of models this week, and hopefully we'll see what other schools are doing. And if there's ideas that we can bring back to potentially implement, we'll be coming forward with that information. So that concludes my report. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Great report.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Where are we on the promotion or the parental information on evidence-based grading? I've heard about it a while, so I don't know where we are in rolling it out to parents. And as I talk to you, my generation, when I grew up in it as a parent, all I know is A, B, C, and F. What is that? D and F. Yeah. I wasn't allowed to get C, so all I know is A and B. So where are we in informing parents and educating them to actually what this is?
Right. So that's a great question. So some of the teachers have put together, and I think I shared a sheet with you guys before, something that teachers have put together that they're sharing with individual students. I had the opportunity to sit in a classroom and watch the teacher kind of navigate through that with students. And I was really impressed with how quickly the kids grasped the concept in terms of what their responsibility was for their learning. So I think it really eased the tension in a room. And this is what I'm most excited about the model, is it really puts learning back into the hands of students. So students are going to be able to see what it is specifically that they're required to learn and at what levels that learning takes place. And then when we match up that grading component to it, students are going to be able to say, well, you know, I have a choice in terms of what grade I want to achieve. With respect to your question, I'll have more information on that next week. I mean, that's one of the things we're going to talk to the teachers about. I'm assuming that they've communicated that with parents, maybe at parent-teacher conferences, because we've had a session of those already, but I'll get more information on that as we're going to go out to schools and do some kind of focus group kind of conversations about that.
Because that would have helped. I mean, I'm 60 next year, so but it would have helped telling my mom that, no, you know, these not so bad, but here's
Right.
evidence-based grading that might have
Right.
got me out of some trouble. So just educating parents.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, with our model school, how they approached it, you know, was just getting that information out there as a school, as individual teachers. But I think what I heard from the model school was basically that once students start experiencing that success and those connections happen between teachers and parents will understand the concept conceptually quickly. And I think they'll like it because, again, it puts ownership back on the student, but it also gives students a lot of opportunity to relearn. So teachers are reteaching, students are relearning. It's not just, I'm going to teach something, I'm going to give you an assessment on it, and I'm going to grade it. numerically and move on. So if all the numbers add up and you get this percentage, you're a failure. We're trying to take that methodology and that thinking out of the equation so that we can promote students to be more successful in school. Because part of learning is not just the material itself, but the confidence of students, you know, that have had poor experiences with learning before. How do we build that back up again? So, yep.
Any other questions? Jim?
I don't have a question, but more of a statement. Mr. Talley, in reference to the disciplinary and starting programs, thank you for doing that. For my fellow board members, be very clear that if the school district doesn't do that, they're not getting help from anybody else. The state is really not helping. They changed 70 and 73 and they're having their meetings, but they're not helping. Our juvenile system is really a mess. But Mr. Talley, and I know this firsthand from being principal, our district works exceptionally well with the county at the levels of juvenile diversion with the state's attorney. I know they would love to be on board. I also know that the sheriff's department and the police department with the school liaisons would love to be on board. I also know that if we don't step up and actually start getting into these programs and holding individuals responsible at their, third grade, they'd be held responsible. And there's very positive ways in which to do that. As we all know, as you're going out looking in the classrooms, you're seeing how wonderful it is. Well, they need that extra step. They need that from administration to have those programs. So what I would like to see from those is when you are in the process of getting them developed and moving, bring us for updates so that if we have a comment that we, you can say, oh, we've already done that. But just so that we're all aware, because why can't we be a model? Why can't we be so good at doing things like this so that other districts from around the nation want to come here to see what we're doing because it's working? So, Mr. Talley, thank you.
Yes, I've always said I think accountability needs to be a balance between intervention and punitive. I mean, it can't just be all punitive. And I think at times that's kind of the only the only tools the district has in its toolbox. So we just have to start, I think, moving towards more innovative approaches. It's going to take a commitment, from the district to do that. And we'll learn a ton about that on Friday when we visit in Sioux Falls. But, and to alleviate some of the frustration with teachers. I mean, I hear that all the time. Teachers are really, they're down in the trenches as our principals. And this is the stuff that they live every day and they deal with. And we got to do our very best to try and help them so that they're not, so they can focus on teaching and learning, which is why we're here. So.
Thank you. Okay. We will be going into executive session for SDCL 1-25-2.1. I will need a motion and a second. Jim and Deb, there will be no further action afterwards. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?